They called her just a nurse. They were wrong. Dead wrong. When armed killers stormed the hospital, hunting for a witness, when bullets flew and blood spilled, the quiet woman in scrubs did something nobody expected. She fought back, not like a nurse, like a soldier. Because before she saved lives with bandages, she took them with bullets. And tonight, two-star general will stand before her and salute. This is her story. But before we begin, if you love stories about hidden heroes and secret identities, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what happens next. And if this story gives you chills, smash that like button. Now, let's dive in. The fluorescent lights hummed above the emergency room. Another night shift at Metro General Hospital. Another crowd of injured patients flooding through the automatic doors. The smell of antiseptic mixed with blood and fear. Nobody noticed the quiet nurse in the corner. Her name was Sarah Mitchell, in the 30s, dark hair pulled back tight. Scrubs that had seen better days. She moved through the chaos like a shadow, calm and precise. The other nurses rushed. They panicked. They shouted for help. Sarah never raised her voice. Dr. Marcus Chen stood at the center of the emergency room, barking orders. His white coat was spotless. His confidence filled the room like expensive cologne. He'd been at Metro General for 3 months, and he already acted like he owned the place. Nurse Mitchell, he snapped without looking at her. We need more gauze and trauma too now. Sarah didn't respond. She was already walking toward the supply room. She'd anticipated the need 5 minutes ago. Dr. Chen didn't notice. He never did. None of them did. To the doctors, Sarah was just another nurse. Reliable? Yes. Competent? Sure. But unremarkable. She didn't push for recognition. She didn't compete for the spotlight. She simply did her job and went home. What they didn't know could fill volumes. The night continued its brutal rhythm. A car accident victim arrived, screaming. A child with a broken arm. An elderly woman clutching her chest. Sarah moved between them all, her hands steady, her eyes constantly scanning, always watching, always calculating, at 11 p.m. The emergency room doors burst open again. 2 men stumbled in, supporting a third between them. The injured man's shirt was soaked red. His breathing came in wet, rattling gasps. The 2 supporters wore jeans and leather jackets, but their eyes told a different story. Military eyes. Hard and haunted. He needs help, one of them said. His voice was tight. Gunshot wound. There was an incident. Dr. Chen rushed over, his face a mask of professional concern. Get him on a gurney. Nurse Mitchell, prep trauma 1. But her eyes had locked on the injured man's face for just a moment. Her expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air around her. She'd seen that face before, in a different place, a different time, a different life. The man's eyes flickered open as they wheeled him past. They landed on Sarah. Recognition flashed across his paint-wisted features. His lips moved. No sound came out, but Sarah could read the word, Captain. She put a finger to her lips. So subtle no one else could see? The man's eyes widened slightly, then closed again. Dr. Chen was already scrubbing in, shouting instructions. This is a through and through. We need to control the bleeding. Nurse Mitchell, where are those O-negative units? Already here, Sarah said quietly, placing them on the tray beside him. Dr. Chen didn't thank her. He was too focused on being the hero. Sarah stepped back into her role. The invisible helper. The silent professional. But her mind was racing now. That man on the table wasn't just any patient. He was Sergeant David Torres, Marine Force Recon. She'd served with him 6 years ago, in a place whose name she couldn't speak. And if he was here, wounded and desperate, running instead of going to a military hospital, something was very wrong. Outside, through the emergency room windows, Sarah noticed a black SUV pulling into the parking lot. Then another. They parked in the shadows, away from the lights. Men in dark suits stepped out. They didn't walk like civilians. Sarah's jaw tightened almost. Imperceptibly. The night had just become much more complicated, and somewhere in the back of her mind, old instincts were waking up. Instincts she'd buried under years of bedpans and blood pressure cuffs, instincts that had kept her alive in places where mistakes meant death. Dr. Chen continued working, oblivious to everything except his own skill. Sarah continued watching. The hunt had found her again. If you want to see how Sarah's secret identity is revealed and what happens when her two worlds collide, subscribe now. Because what's coming next will change everything at Metro General Hospital forever. The real story was just beginning. The surgery took 40 minutes. Dr. Chen's hands moved with practice. Extracting the bullet fragments, repairing the damage, he was good at his job. Sarah had to admit that, but he was also arrogant. And arrogance made people blind. Vitals are stable, Sarah reported, her eyes on the monitors. Of course they are, Dr. Chen replied. I told you this was manageable. Sergeant Torres lay unconscious on the table, his chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. The anesthesia would keep him under for hours. Time Sarah didn't have. Those men outside weren't there to visit patients, as Dr. Chen finished closing the incision. Sarah's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, glancing at the screen. A text from an unknown number. We know he's here. Stand down and step aside. Sarah's expression didn't change. She deleted the message and slipped the phone back into her pocket. Nurse Mitchell, are you paying attention? Dr. Chen's voice cut through her thoughts. Yes, doctor. The patient is being transferred to Recovery Room 3. Good. Monitor him closely. I want updates every 30 minutes. Dr. Chen stripped off his gloves with a snap. I'll be in my office if you need me. He walked away, already pulling out his phone to call someone. Probably to brag about the successful surgery, Sarah waited until he was gone. Then she moved. Her hands flew across the computer terminal, pulling up security camera feeds. The hospital's outdated system wasn't designed for what she needed, but she made it work. 6 men in the parking lot. 2 more, entering through the main entrance. They moved with military precision, trying to look casual and failing. Sarah recognized the pattern. An extraction team. Not official military. Something darker. Private contractors. Her mind raced through possibilities. Torres had come here instead of a military hospital. He'd recognized her. He'd called her captain. He was running from something. Or someone. And now they'd tracked him here. Sarah walked calmly to the recovery room. Torres was still unconscious, hooked up to monitors and 4 lines. His 2 friends from earlier sat in chairs beside him, pretending to be concerned family members. They looked up when Sarah entered. One of them started to speak. Sarah cut him off with a gesture. She pointed to the corners of the room, the security cameras. Then she pulled out a notepad and wrote quickly. Many are after him? The men exchanged glances. The taller one took the pen. At least 8. Maybe more. They'll move soon, Sarah nodded. She wrote again. Why? Torres witnessed something. Something classified. They want him silenced. The smell of disinfectant seemed sharper suddenly. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder. Sarah's heart rate didn't increase. It never did. Even when the world was falling apart around her, she'd trained for this. Years ago, in a different life, she wrote one more message. Stay here. Lock the door when I leave. Don't open it for anyone except me. The shorter man grabbed her wrist as she turned to go. His grip was tight, desperate. Can you protect him? He whispered, too quiet for the cameras to pick up. Sarah looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the fear there, the loyalty, the knowledge that they were outgunned and trapped. Yes, she said simply. She walked out of the recovery room. The door clicked, locked behind her. The hospital corridor stretched ahead, bright and sterile. Doctors and nurses moved past, focused on their own patients and problems. The normal world continued. Unaware that danger was walking through their doors, Sarah pulled out her phone and made a call. It rang 3 times before someone answered. This is Mitchell. Authorization code Delta-7-7-9er-Alpha. A pause, on the other end. Computer keys clicking rapidly. Authorization confirmed. We show you as inactive, Agent Mitchell. What's your status? Compromised position. Metro General Hospital. Hostile extraction team on site. I need a containment protocol. Another pause. Longer this time, Agent Mitchell? You've been out of the field for 4 years? Are you certain you want to reactivate? Sarah watched through the window as 2 men in suits entered the main lobby. They flashed badges at the security guard. The guard nodded and pointed toward the elevators. I don't have a choice, Sarah said quietly. Initiate lockdown. 15 minutes, confirmed. Backup is 30 minutes out. I only need 15. She ended the call. Dr. Chen emerged from his office, coffee in hand. He nearly bumped into Sarah in the hallway. Nurse Mitchell. How's our gunshot patient? Stable and resting, Sarah replied. Doctor, I need you to do something for me. Dr. Chen raised an eyebrow. In 3 months, Sarah had never asked him for anything.
What is it?
I need you to go to the cafeteria. Now, take the other staff from this floor with you. There's been a situation in the kitchen. Possible food contamination. Administration wants all medical staff to verify they haven't consumed anything from there today. It was a terrible lie. Transparent and rushed, but Dr. Chen's ego made him gullible. If administration needed him, then of course it must be important. Fine, but this better not take long. I have patients to check on. It won't, Sarah promised. She watched him gather the nurses and residents, herding them toward the elevators. Within 5 minutes, the floor was nearly empty. Sarah walked to the nurses' station. She reached under the desk and found what she was looking for. A small magnetic case hidden years ago during her first week at Metro General. Inside was a key card and a badge that didn't say nurse. The elevator doors opened at the end of the hallway. 4 men stepped out, suits and earpieces, hands resting near concealed weapons. They saw Sarah standing alone at the nurses' station. One of them smiled. Evening, ma'am. We're looking for a patient. Gunshot wound brought in about an hour ago. Sarah set down her clipboard. Her hands were steady. Her voice was calm. I'm sorry. That information is protected by HIPAA. I can't help you. The man's smile widened. We're federal agents, ma'am. We have authority here, and you'll need to show me a warrant, Sarah replied. The men looked at each other. The smile faded from the leader's face. I don't think you understand the situation. Sarah's eyes locked onto his. I understand perfectly. The temperature in the hallway seemed to drop, and for the first time, the men started to realize that the quiet nurse in front of them wasn't what she seemed. The leader took a step forward. His hand moved toward his jacket.
No, I could do this the easy way.
Or Sarah moved. Her hand shot out and grabbed his wrist before he could reach his weapon. She twisted, stepping into his space. And suddenly he was bent over the nurse's station with his arm locked behind his back. The whole movement took less than 2 seconds. The other 3 men reached for their guns. Don't, Sarah said quietly. They froze. Sarah's free hand had found the leader's weapon. She held it casually, pointed at the floor, but the message was clear. She knew how to use it. You're not federal agents, Sarah continued, her voice still calm. Real federal agents would have gone through proper channels. They would have warrants and hospital liaisons and lawyers. You're contractors, which means you have no authority here. The leader grunted, his face pressed against the desk. You're making a mistake. No, Sarah replied. You are. She released him and stepped back, ejecting the magazine from his weapon in one smooth motion. The bullets scattered across the floor. She tossed the empty gun back to him. Leave. Now, before this becomes an incident neither of us wants. The leader straightened, rubbing his wrist. His face was red. Anger and humiliation mixed in his eyes. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I could say the same to you, Sarah replied. For a moment, nobody moved. The hospital sounds continued around them. The beep of monitors, the hum of ventilation, the distant ding of elevator bells. Then the leader nodded to his men. They backed toward the elevator, eyes never leaving Sarah. "This isn't over," he said. "I know," Sarah answered. The elevator doors closed. Sarah counted to 10, then moved quickly back to the recovery room. She knocked twice, paused, then knocked once. The door opened. Torres's friends looked at her with new respect, he heard the tall one said. "The security cameras are about to go offline," Sarah finished. "Hospital-wide system maintenance. Scheduled for exactly 12 minutes from now." She moved to Torres's bedside, checking his vitals. "Still stable. Still unconscious. We need to move him," Sarah said. "They'll be back with more men. And next time, they won't be polite." "Where?" the shorter man asked. "They've probably got the exits covered." Sarah pulled out her phone and opened a hospital schematic she'd memorized years ago. Every building she worked in, she learned the hidden spaces, the forgotten corridors, the emergency routes nobody remembered. "There's a sub-basement," she said. "Old maintenance tunnels from when this building was a military hospital during World War II. They connect to the parking structure 3 blocks away." "You've got to be kidding," the tall man said. Sarah looked at him. "Do I look like I'm kidding?" He shook his head. "Can you move him?" Sarah asked. "Yes, ma'am. Don't call me ma'am." "Sarah is fine." She began disconnecting Torres from the monitors, switching him to portable equipment. "We have 10 minutes before they regroup. Possibly less." The two men worked quickly, transferring Torres to a wheelchair. Sarah grabbed extra medical supplies, stuffing them into a bag. Her movements were efficient, practiced. She'd done this before. In desert compounds and jungle clearings and burning buildings, the location changed, but the principles stayed the same. Protect the asset. Complete the mission. They wheeled Torres into the hallway. Sarah led them to a service elevator most staff didn't even know existed. It groaned as they descended, the ancient mechanism protesting. The sub-basement was exactly as Sarah remembered. Dark, dusty, smelling of old. Concrete and forgotten things. Pipes ran along the ceiling, dripping condensation. The walls were painted institutional green, the color of military buildings everywhere. "This way," Sarah said. Clicking on a flashlight, they moved through the tunnels. The wheelchair's wheels squeaking on the uneven floor. Behind them, Sarah heard a distant alarm. The hospital's emergency system engaging. The lockdown had begun. Every door in Metro General was now sealed. Electronic locks engaged. Security protocols active. Yeah, nobody in. Nobody out. The contractors upstairs were trapped just like everyone else. Sarah smiled grimly. She'd bought them time, but not much. They reached a junction in the tunnels. Sarah paused, listening. Footsteps echoed from somewhere ahead. Multiple people, moving fast. "Found the tunnels," the tall man whispered. "Of course they did," Sarah replied. "These men are professionals. So what do we do?" Sarah set down her medical bag and opened it. Beneath the bandages and medication, there was something else. A small case, sealed and locked. She opened it with her THUMB. Prinned. Inside was a weapon. Not standard military issue. Something older. Something she'd carried in places she couldn't name. The shorter man's eyes widened. "Who are you?" Sarah checked the weapon. Full magazine. Round in the chamber. Safety on? Someone who really hoped she'd never need this again? The footsteps were getting closer. Flashlight beams appeared in the tunnel ahead, sweeping across the walls. Sarah pointed to a side passage. "Take Torres that way." "Stay quiet. I'll handle this." "Handle what?" the tall man asked. "There are at least 6 of them." Sarah looked at him. In the dim light, her eyes seemed different. Harder, colder. "I know," she said. She moved forward into the darkness, while Torres's friends wheeled him away. The tunnel narrowed. Sarah's footsteps were silent now, muscle memory taking over. She'd walked through worse than this. Afghan caves. Syrian basements. Places where every shadow could hide death. The contractors' flashlights swept closer. She could hear their voices now, coordinating on radios. We have movement in tunnel section C. Multiple targets. Copy. Converge and contain. Non-lethal if possible. Sarah smiled without humor. At least they weren't trying to kill everyone. Yet she reached a support pillar and pressed herself against it. Controlled her breathing. Slowed her heartbeat. The first contractor rounded the corner. Sarah's hand shot out, grabbing his radio and crushing it in one motion. Her other hand found a pressure point on his neck. He crumpled silently. The second contractor came through 10 seconds later. Sarah swept his legs and used his own momentum to slam him into the wall. He hit hard and slid down, unconscious. 2 down. 4 to go. But now they knew she was here. Contact. We have contact. Hostile in the tunnels? The remaining contractors spread out, moving tactically. These weren't amateurs. They had training. Discipline. Sarah waited in the darkness, her weapon still holstered. She didn't want to shoot anyone if she could avoid it, but she would if she had to, eh?
Ah!
Flashlight beam swept past her hiding spot. She moved like smoke, sliding from shadow to shadow. Another contractor appeared. She disabled him with 2 quick strikes, 3 down. She's picking us off. One of the remaining contractors shouted, "Fall back to a defensible position." They were learning, adapting. Good. Sarah moved deeper into the tunnels, drawing them away from Torres. The contractors followed, their frustration growing. Then, from somewhere above, she heard something that made her blood run cold. Gunfire. Not from the contractors in the tunnels. From somewhere in the hospital above, they'd brought reinforcements. And those reinforcements weren't being careful anymore. Sarah pressed her radio, the one she'd taken from the first contractor. All units converge on recovery room 3. Patient is still there. Repeat, patient is still there. Calculated lie. But it would buy Torres more time. She heard boots thundering above, moving toward the wrong location. Sarah turned and ran back through the tunnels, retracing her path. She needed to reach Torres and his friends. Needed to get them out before she rounded a corner and stopped. Dr. Chen stood in the tunnel ahead, his white coat dirty and torn. His eyes were wide with shock. Nurse Mitchell. What? What's happening? I heard gunshots in the lockdown and he stopped. His eyes fell to the weapon in Sarah's hand. His face went pale. Who are you? He whispered. Sarah looked at Dr. Chen. For 4 years, she'd worked beside him. For years of being dismissed, ignored, treated like furniture. Now, he saw her clearly for the first time. Someone trying to save a patient, she said simply. You're not just a nurse. No, Sarah admitted. I'm not. Dr. Chen's hands were shaking. Blood stained his pristine white coat, not his own. Someone upstairs had been hurt in the gunfire. There are armed men in my hospital, he said. His voice cracked. They're asking about the gunshot patient. They're threatening my staff. They shot. He stopped, swallowing hard. They shot Nurse Rodriguez. She tried to stop them from entering the ICU. Sarah's jaw tightened. Is she alive? I don't know. There was so much blood. I ran. I ran. The admission seemed to break something in him. The arrogant doctor crumbled. I didn't know what to do. Sarah holstered her weapon. You did the right thing. You survived. But my patient is safe, Sarah interrupted. I moved him. He's not in recovery anymore. Dr. Chen stared at her. How did you... When did you? It doesn't matter. Sarah checked her watch. 20 minutes since the lockdown. The backup she'd called for would arrive in 10. She just needed to keep everyone alive until then. Doctor, I need you to listen very carefully. Go to the cafeteria. Lock yourself in the freezer. It's the most secure room in the building. Stay there until you hear the all clear. What about you? I'll handle this, you can't. There were at least a dozen armed men up there. You're just... Sarah met his eyes. The look she gave him could have stopped a charging bear. Just what, doctor? Dr. Chen fell silent, because for the first time, he really looked at her. Not at the scrubs or the quiet demeanor. At the steel beneath. Who are you? he asked again, quieter this time. Someone who's very good at their job, Sarah replied. Just like you are. Now go. Dr. Chen hesitated one more moment, then nodded and ran down the tunnel toward the hospital's main basement. Sarah turned and moved deeper into the tunnels. Following the path Torres's friends had taken, she found them 2 corridors over, hidden in an old electrical room. Torres was stirring, the anesthesia wearing off. His eyes flickered open, unfocused. "Captain," he mumbled. Are you? "Rest, Sergeant," Sarah said quietly. "You're safe, they know," Torres whispered urgently. "The operation in Kandahar, the one that never happened. They know I saw the files." Sarah knelt beside him. "What files?" "Weapons shipments. Off the books? Someone in the chain of command is selling to the enemy." Torres's words came faster, desperate. "I found the proof. Tried to report it. They tried to kill me instead." Sarah's mind raced. A corruption scandal in the military supply chain. No wonder contractors were involved. Someone with serious money and power wanted Torres silenced. "Who did you tell?" she asked. "I didn't know who to trust, so I ran. I thought if I could just lay low for a few days, figure out who was clean." Torres coughed. Pain crossed his face. "Then I saw you in that, I knew you'd protect me. You never left anyone behind." The tall friend leaned close to Sarah. "What now, ma'am?" Before Sarah could answer, an explosion rocked the tunnel. Dust rained from the ceiling. Somewhere above, something had detonated. "They're getting desperate," Sarah said. "They know backup is coming. They're trying to flush us out." Got another explosion. Closer this time. The contractors were systematically destroying the tunnel system. "We can't stay here," the shorter man said. Sarah pulled out her phone. No signal this deep. She needed to reach the surface. Needed to coordinate with the backup team, but going up meant walking into the contractor's hands. She looked at Torres, barely conscious. At his 2 loyal friends, at the walls closing in around them. Sometimes the only way out was through. "Can you carry him?" Sarah asked the 2 men. "Yes, then follow me. Stay close. Don't stop for anything." Sarah led them back through the tunnels, moving toward the oldest section of the hospital. The foundation that dated back to 1943, there was a way out here. She'd found it years ago while exploring. A coal chute from the original heating system. Long abandoned? Sealed with a rusted grate. But Sarah had a plan for that. They reached the chute as another explosion shook the tunnels. The ceiling cracked. Water pipes burst, flooding the floor. Sarah examined the grate. Heavy steel. Ancient bolts. "We'll never break through that," the tall man said. Sarah didn't answer. She pulled out her weapon and aimed carefully. 3 shots. The bolts shattered. The sound echoed through the tunnels like thunder. Above them, she heard voices shouting, boots running. The contractors knew where they were now. "Move," Sarah ordered. The 2 men shoved Torres through the chute first, climbing after him. Sarah covered the rear, her weapon ready. The first contractor appeared at the tunnel entrance. Sarah fired twice. Warning shots. He dove back into cover. You have them cornered in Sector D. Old coal chute. Sarah climbed into the chute, pulling herself up the narrow passage. It was tight, dark. The metal was slick with decades of soot and rust. Behind her, she heard the contractors entering the tunnel. "Seal it off. Don't let them escape." Sarah reached the top of the chute. It opened into an alley behind the hospital. Night air hit her face. The smell of rain and exhaust. Torres's friends were already pulling him out. Moving toward a dumpster for cover, Sarah emerged from the chute just as gunfire erupted below. Bullets sparked off the metal walls. She rolled to the side, finding cover behind a maintenance shed. 3 contractors climbed out of the chute behind her. They spread out immediately, professional and efficient. Sarah counted her ammunition. 6 rounds left. 3 targets, not great odds, but she'd worked with worse. The contractors advanced. Using vehicles and dumpsters for cover, they were trying to flank her, cut off her escape routes. Sarah stayed low, controlling her breathing, waiting for the right moment. Then she heard it. The sound she'd been waiting for. Helicopter rotors. 2 black choppers appeared over the hospital. Powerful searchlights cutting through the darkness. They didn't have standard markings. These weren't police. These were hers. The contractors heard them too. They hesitated, looking up. That moment of distraction was all Sarah needed. She moved from cover, crossing the distance to the nearest contractor in 3 seconds. Disarmed him. Used his body as a shield as the other 2 opened fire. The helicopters descended, and suddenly the alley was full of people. Real federal agents this time. Tactical gear. Proper identification. Weapons down. Federal agents. Weapons down now. The contractors realized they were outgunned. They dropped their weapons and raised their hands. Sarah lowered her borrowed weapon and stepped away from the contractor she'd been using as cover. He collapsed to his knees, breathing hard. A woman in a dark suit approached Sarah. She was in her 50s, gray hair pulled back, eyes sharp as broken glass. "Agent Mitchell," she said. "It's been a long time, Director Reyes," Sarah replied. "Wish I could say it's good to see you. I imagine you do." Director Reyes looked around the alley. At Torres on the ground, at the contractors being zip-tied and read their rights, at the chaos spilling out of the hospital behind them. "You certainly know how to make an entrance." "I was trying to keep a low profile, actually." Reyes smiled without humor. "You've never been good at that, Captain." The title hung in the air. Captain, not nurse. Not former agent, current rank. Active duty Sarah had never actually left. She'd just been placed deep undercover. So deep, she'd almost forgotten herself. Until tonight. "We have a problem," Sarah said, gesturing to Torres. "He has evidence of corruption in the military supply chain. Someone high up is moving weapons to hostile forces. The people who did this tonight, they're trying to bury it." Rhea's expression darkened. "How high up?" "He doesn't know. That's why he ran." "Then we'd better get him somewhere safe." Rhea signaled to her team. Medics rushed forward, checking Torres's wounds, preparing him for transport. Behind them, the hospital's main doors burst open. Dr. Chen stumbled out, flanked by police officers. His eyes scanned the alley until they found Sarah. He stared. At the federal agents, at the helicopters, at Director Reyes standing beside Sarah like they were old colleagues. Understanding dawned on his face. But before he could speak, Sarah heard something else. The roar of engines, more vehicles were arriving. Military vehicles this time. Humvees and armored transports. A convoy. The convoy stopped at the hospital entrance. Doors opened. Marines emerged, weapons ready, forming a perimeter. Sarah's instincts kicked in. "Something was wrong, Reyes," she said quietly. "Did you call for military backup?" Director Reyes's hand moved toward her weapon. No, the Marines moved with precision, securing the area. They weren't threatening, not yet. But their presence changed everything. An officer stepped out of the lead vehicle. Full-dress uniform, ribbons and medals. Stars on his shoulders. A 2-star general. He walked toward the alley, his expression unreadable. The federal agents tensed. This was their scene, their jurisdiction. Military involvement, complicated things. The general's eyes swept across the chaos, landed on Torres, now on a stretcher. Then on Sarah, he stopped walking. For a long moment, nobody moved. The helicopters hovered overhead. The federal agents watched. Dr. Chen stared. From the hospital entrance, then the general's hand moved to his forehead. He saluted. Not a casual gesture. A formal, crisp military salute. The kind given to a superior officer, director. Reyes's eyes widened. Dr. Chen's jaw dropped. Sarah stood there in her dirty scrubs, blood on her hands, weapon at her side. She didn't move, didn't return the salute. "General Morrison," she said quietly. "This is unexpected. Captain Mitchell, the general replied, holding his salute. Permission to approach. Sarah sighed. Her cover was about to be completely blown, but there was no avoiding it now. Granted, she said. She returned the salute. Proper military protocol. The general lowered his hand and approached. His Marines maintained their perimeter, but they were clearly there for protection, not aggression. We received word of an incident involving one of our personnel, Morrison said. Sergeant Torres. I came personally to ensure his safety. With respect, General, you brought a lot of firepower for a simple medical evacuation. Morrison's expression darkened. Because I knew who Torres found. The corruption he uncovered goes deeper than weapon smuggling, Captain. It reaches into the Pentagon itself. Sarah felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. Pentagon-level corruption. That explained the contractor's desperation. The resources they'd thrown at silencing one sergeant. How deep? She asked. Deep enough that I couldn't trust regular channels. Deep enough that when Torres went missing, I had to assume he was already dead. Morrison looked at Torres on the stretcher. I'm glad I was wrong. Director Reyes stepped forward. General, with respect, this is a federal matter now. My agency will handle. Your agency has been compromised, Morrison interrupted. 3 of your field directors are implicated in the investigation. I can't risk Torres's intel falling into the wrong hands. Reyes's face went pale. That's not possible. Captain Mitchell, Morrison said, turning back to Sarah. I'm formally reactivating you to active duty. Effective immediately. Your orders are to secure Sergeant Torres and the evidence he's carrying. Transport him to a secure military facility. Trust no one outside of this perimeter. Sarah looked at Reyes, at the federal agents who'd just arrived to help, at the complexity spiraling out of control. General, I've been deep cover for 4 years. If you pull me out now, your cover is already blown, Morrison said, gesturing to the crowd gathering around the hospital. Police, media, curious. Onlookers with phones recording everything. He was right. By tomorrow, Sarah's face would be on the news. Questions would be asked. Her quiet life as a nurse was over. What about the hospital? Sarah asked. The staff? There are injured people because of this. The men will secure the area. Medical personnel will be protected. But you need to leave now. Sarah looked at Dr. Chen, still standing at the hospital entrance. His expression was a mix of shock, betrayal, and something else. Maybe respect. She'd saved his hospital, his patients, his life, but she'd also lied to him for 4 years. I need 5 minutes, Sarah said. Morrison frowned. Captain, 5 minutes, General. Then I'll follow orders. Morrison studied her face, then nodded. 5 minutes. Make them count. Sarah walked toward the hospital entrance. The Marines parted to let her through. Dr. Chen watched her approach, speechless. How's Nurse Rodriguez? Sarah asked. Dr. Chen blinked. Of all the questions he expected, that wasn't one of them. She's in surgery. The bullet missed major arteries. She'll survive. Good. You knew her name? Dr. Chen said quietly. After 4 years of barely speaking to anyone. You knew all of our names, didn't you? Sarah nodded. I knew everything. Your schedules. Your specialties. Your weaknesses and strengths. It was my job to know. Were you ever really a nurse? I'm a fully licensed RN. That part was real. The training. The skills. I wasn't pretending when I helped patients. Dr. Chen's hands clenched. But you were pretending to be. What? Normal? One of us. I was pretending to be someone who didn't carry the weight of classified operations and enemy kill counts, Sarah replied. Someone who could save lives instead of taking them. For 4 years, I got to be that person. It was the best assignment I've ever had. And now? Sarah looked back at the alley, at Torres being loaded into the military transport, at the Marines and federal agents and the machinery of classified operations grinding back to life. Now I remember who I really am. She turned to leave. Captain, Dr. Chen called. Sarah stopped. Thank you, he said, for saving my hospital. for protecting my staff, even if you were. Whoever you are. Thank you, Sarah nodded. You're a good doctor, Chen. Arrogant sometimes. But good. Take care of them. She walked back to the alley. Her 5 minutes were up. Director Reyes approached her. If Morrison's right about the corruption in my agency, I need to know who I can trust. Start with your gut, Sarah said. The people who've been with you longest? The ones who've had opportunities to betray you but didn't. It's not much to go on. It's more than Torres had. And he stayed alive long enough to get help. Reyes pulled out a business card. If you need anything off the books, call me. We may work for different agencies, but we're on the same side. Sarah took the card. I'll remember that. Morrison was waiting by the transport. Time to go, Captain? Sarah climbed into the vehicle beside Torres. The sergeant was awake now, his eyes clear, despite the pain medication. I knew you'd come through, he whispered. You always did. Save your strength, Sarah replied. We still need to get you somewhere safe. The convoy began moving. Police cleared the streets. The helicopters followed overhead. Sarah looked back at Metro General Hospital, growing smaller in the distance. For years of her life, for years of peace, gone in one night. Torres's hand gripped her arm. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to drag you back into this world. Didn't drag me anywhere, Sarah said. I never really left. I was just on loan to a different kind of mission. Saving lives instead of taking them. Something like that. The convoy drove through the city streets. They passed normal people living normal lives. Going to work. Coming home. Unaware of the invisible wars fought in the shadows to keep them safe, Sarah had been one of them briefly. She'd worn scrubs and taken blood pressure and changed bedpans. She'd been invisible and underestimated and overlooked, and she'd loved every minute of it. But that life was over now. The convoy reached a military airfield. A transport plane waited on the tarmac, engines already running. Morrison's phone rang. He answered, listened. Then his face went grim. Change of plans, he said. We have a situation. What kind of situation? Sarah asked. The kind where someone very important wants to meet you. Morrison handed her the phone. Sarah took it cautiously. This is Captain Mitchell, a voice came through the line. Deep, authoritative, unmistakable. Captain Mitchell, this is Secretary of Defense Carmichael. I need you in Washington. Tonight. The evidence, Sergeant, Torres recovered, implicates people at the highest levels of military command. People I've trusted for years. I need someone outside the chain of command. Someone with no political connections. Someone whose loyalty is beyond question. Sarah's mind raced. The Secretary of Defense himself. This went even higher than she'd thought. With respect, sir, I'm just a captain. There are generals who... I don't want a general, Carmichael interrupted. Generals have ambitions. Careers to protect. You've spent 4 years as a nurse captain. You have nothing to gain from this, except doing what's right. That's exactly what I need. Sarah looked at Torres, at Morrison, at the weight of what was being asked of her. What are my orders, sir? Get Torres to Walter Reed Medical Center. Secure his testimony. Then report to the Pentagon. I'm authorizing a full internal investigation. You'll lead it. Sir, I don't have the rank for you do now. As of this moment, you're promoted to major. Congratulations. Don't let it go to your head. The line went dead. Sarah stared at the phone. Morrison was smiling. Welcome back to the fight, Major. 3 weeks later, Metro General Hospital had returned to normal. The bullet holes were patched, the damaged floors repaired. The media attention faded, but nothing was really the same. Dr. Chen stood at the nurses' station reviewing charts. The space felt different without Sarah there. Empty somehow. A new nurse had taken her place. Efficient, competent, but not Sarah. Dr. Chen. One of the residents approached. There's someone here to see you. She says it's important. Chen looked up. Who? She didn't say. But she has military escorts. Chen's heart skipped. He walked to the hospital lobby, and there she was, Sarah Mitchell. But not the Sarah he'd known. She wore a military dress uniform now. The ribbons on her chest told stories he couldn't read. Major's insignia gleamed on her shoulders. Her posture was different, confident, commanding, but her eyes were the same. Calm, watchful, kind beneath the steel. "Doctor," she said, a slight smile on her face. "Major," he replied, the title strange on his tongue. "This is unexpected. I was in the area. Thought I'd check on my former patient. Torres was discharged last week. Full recovery. He's in protective custody pending the investigation." "I know." I read the report. Sarah glanced around the lobby. "Walk with me." They walked through the hospital corridors, past the emergency room, past the recovery rooms, places where Sarah had spent 4 years saving lives quietly. "The investigation is ongoing," Sarah said. "We've arrested 6 military officials and 4 contractors. The weapons smuggling operation was larger than anyone imagined." Torres's testimony was crucial. "You're leading it," Chen said. "The investigation. I saw the news, not by choice. But someone had to." We reached the hospital cafeteria, the same place where Chen used to grab coffee and complain about difficult patients. Sarah had sat here too, alone in the corner, eating quietly. "I owe you an apology," Chen said suddenly. Sarah looked at him. "For what?" "For treating you like you were invisible. For 4 years I dismissed you, overlooked you. Thought you were just a nurse?" "Yes." Chen's face reddened. "I was arrogant, blind. You saved this hospital. You saved lives. And I never even saw you." Sarah sat down at one of the tables. Chen joined her. "You weren't supposed to see me," Sarah said. "That was the whole point. It was deep cover. If you'd noticed something special about me, if I'd stood out in any way, the cover would have failed. But still, you're a good doctor, Chen. You save lives. That's what matters. Not your ego. Not your blind spots. The work." Chen was quiet for a moment. Then he asked the question that had haunted him for weeks. "Why? Why spend 4 years here? Why pretend to be something you're not?" Sarah looked out the cafeteria window. At the city beyond, at the normal world she'd been part of, briefly, because after 15 years of classified operations, I forgot what I was fighting for, she said. I'd seen so much death, caused so much of it. I needed to remember that the world isn't just shadows and secrets, that there are good people doing good work, saving lives, making things better. You could have retired. I'm not built for retirement. But I needed a break, a chance to be someone else, to prove to myself that I could heal instead of destroy. And did you? Prove it. Sarah smiled. For 4 years, I was the best nurse this hospital had. Nobody noticed me. Nobody thanked me. And it was perfect. Chen laughed despite himself. You really are terrible at staying hidden, apparently. I sat in comfortable silence. The cafeteria bustled around them. Doctors and nurses grabbing meals. Visitors seeking coffee. Life continuing. What happens now? Chen asked. The investigation continues. I'll be in Washington for the foreseeable future. After that? Sarah shrugged. I don't know. Maybe another assignment. Maybe something different. Will you come back? To nursing. Sarah considered the question. Maybe someday. When this is over, when I need to remember again. Chen pulled something from his pocket. Sarah's old hospital ID badge. The one that said Sarah Mitchell, RN. I kept it, he said. In case you wanted it back. Sarah took the badge. Looked at the photo. The woman in the picture looked tired, anonymous, forgettable. She'd never been more proud of anything. Thank you, she said quietly. Chen stood, extended his hand. For what it's worth, Major Mitchell, you were the best nurse I ever worked with, even if I was too blind to see it. Sarah shook his hand. You'll do better. With the new nurses? With your staff? You learned something from this. I did. I learned not to underestimate quiet people. Sarah smiled. That's a good lesson for anyone. She stood to leave. 2 Marines in dress uniform waited by the cafeteria entrance. Her escorts, Major Chen called as she walked away. If you ever need a reference for a nursing position, I'll write you one hell of a recommendation. Actually laughed. I'll keep that in mind, doctor. She walked out of Metro General Hospital for the last time. The Marines fell into step beside her. A black car waited at the entrance. Government plates. Tinted windows. As Sarah climbed in, she took one last look at the hospital. At the emergency room doors. At the windows of the 4th floor where she'd worked. Somewhere up there, lives were being saved. Patients were being treated. The work continued without her. That was how it should be. The car pulled away from the hospital. Sarah's phone buzzed. A message from Director Reyes.
Oh.
New intel on the corruption case. Pentagon meeting in 2 hours. Your presence required. Sarah typed a response. Acknowledged. En route. Another message appeared. This one from Torres. Heard you got promoted. Congratulations, Major. Knew you couldn't stay invisible forever. Sarah smiled and replied. Some habits die hard, Sergeant. Stay safe. The car merged into traffic. The city passed by outside. Millions of people living their lives. Protected by people they'd never meet. Saved by heroes they'd never know. Existed. Sarah Mitchell had been one of those invisible. Heroes for 4 years, now she was visible. Again, promoted. Recognized. Leading an investigation that would shake the wall. Military to its core. But she'd always remember the lesson. She learned at Metro General Hospital. The most important work often happens in silence. The greatest heroes are the ones nobody notices. And sometimes, the quiet nurse in the corner is actually a warrior who chose compassion over combat, even if just for a little while. 6 months later, the investigation concluded. 7 generals arrested, a senator implicated, dozens of contractors facing federal charges. The weapons smuggling operation was dismantled. The corruption exposed. Justice, slowly but surely, served. Sarah Mitchell's name appeared in classified reports. Her actions praised in closed-door Pentagon meetings. She received commendations she'd never be able to display publicly, and then, when the dust settled, she requested a transfer back to field operations. Back to the shadows. Back to the invisible work that kept the world safe. But on her first day at the new assignment, she noticed something. The base medical center was understaffed. Nurses overworked and exhausted. Sarah walked into the chief medical officer's office. Major Mitchell, the officer said, standing. What can I do for you? Sarah set her medical license on the desk. I'd like to volunteer, she said. In the medical center. During my offers, I'm a licensed RN. The officer stared at her. At her rank? At her commendations? That's highly irregular. You're a senior intelligence officer. You don't need to, I know, Sarah interrupted. But I want to. If you'll have me. The officer looked at her license, then at her face, then smiled. Welcome aboard. Nurse Mitchell. Sarah smiled back. Some warriors fought with weapons. Some fought with intelligence and strategy, and some fought with both. But the best warriors never forgot why they were fighting. They remembered that beneath the uniforms and the rank and the classified operations, there were real people who needed help. And sometimes, the most heroic thing you could do was simply show up and do the work quietly, competently, without recognition. Because that's what real heroes do. They serve in whatever form that service takes. In Sarah Mitchell, Major, United States Special Operations Command, licensed registered nurse, was one hell of a hero, even if most people would never know her name, even if she liked it that way. The quiet ones always do.